The film begins with a beautiful woman named Tracy Westmoreland, who has just finished having lunch with her grandmother, Margaret. It is revealed that Tracy's parents died in an accident when she was 12 years old, and she was subsequently raised by her grandmother. As a grandmother who has cared for her well, Margaret wishes to see her granddaughter married to a man before she dies from heart disease. Initially, Tracy refuses her grandmother's request, but when Margaret experiences pain, Tracy reluctantly lies and says she already has a fiancé. After lunch, Tracy takes Margaret home and meets her assistant, Alan. Before they part ways, Margaret, feeling happy that Tracy is engaged, expresses her desire to meet the man. Margaret, a former novelist, also owns a book publishing company now managed by Tracy. At the company, Tracy has a close friend named Shelley and shares with her the situation with Margaret and the lie about being engaged. Confused by her grandmother's request, Tracy searches online for a male companion service. This leads her to a man named Rob, who works for a company called Rent-A-Groom, which helps women with problems like Tracy's. Wanting her plan to go smoothly, Tracy creates a fake last name for Rob and instructs him to pretend to be an accountant. Tracy also shares a bit about her grandmother, and it turns out that Rob knows of Margaret as a romantic novelist favored by his mother. During their conversation, Tracy explains that Margaret, suffering from heart disease, wants to see her married. However, this charade is only supposed to last a few weeks, and Tracy informs Rob that she will be taking him to meet Margaret. On the other hand, at the company, Tracy is actually liked by a colleague named Todd, and they apparently went on a date once. Unfortunately, Tracy has no interest in Todd and knows him to be an arrogant man who tries to gain favor with her grandmother. The next day, Rob and Tracy arrive at Margaret's house as planned. Inside, Rob accidentally sees his mother's favorite novel, and at the same time, Margaret feels happy because she finally gets to meet Tracy's fiancé. Since Rob's mother loves romantic novels, he finds it easy to talk with Margaret, which makes her like him even more. At that moment, Rob shares that his mother died when he was a child, and since then, he was raised by his father, who was always busy working as a restaurant chef. During the conversation, Rob says that he met Tracy while skiing in the mountains. Unfortunately, Rob gets carried away and uses many romantic phrases that sound like nonsense. Tracy, displeased with the story, takes Rob aside to talk privately, instructing him not to fabricate elaborate tales about their romance. Tracy even tells Rob to just be a simple fiancé, and after giving him some guidance, she suggests they say goodbye to Margaret. The next day at the office, Tracy is shocked to learn that her grandmother has already informed the staff about her engagement. Additionally, Margaret wants to host an engagement party for Tracy and has invited everyone from the office. Surprised by the news, Tracy confides in Shelley that she hired a man to be her fake fiancé. Tracy also explains that she had to go through with this charade to protect Margaret's feelings due to her heart condition. Later that afternoon, Tracy and Rob discuss their engagement party, which is to be held at a restaurant called Hollingsworth. However, Rob admits that he used to work at that restaurant and, fearing he might be recognized, asks Tracy to choose another venue. As promised, Rob picks up Tracy from her home to head to the party together. Before they leave, Rob gives Tracy an engagement ring, explaining that a good friend lent it to him. When they arrive at the destination, Rob and Tracy meet Margaret, who is waiting in front of the restaurant. Margaret then invites them inside to introduce Rob to the office staff as Tracy's fiancé. When Tracy introduces Rob to Shelley, she immediately admires the engagement ring, which adds credibility to their ruse. Shelley also remarks that Rob is quite handsome and expresses interest in hiring him once he finishes working for Tracy. Shortly afterward, they encounter Todd, who cannot accept that Tracy is engaged to Rob. Todd even brings up Rob's job as an accountant and starts asking questions about his supposed company. To avoid answering work-related questions, Rob instead shares his past, mentioning that he is from Chicago and that his mother has passed away. He also talks about his father's journey from working as a waiter to owning his own restaurant. Before they leave, Margaret suddenly wants to take them somewhere to plan the wedding. Initially, Tracy is hesitant about the idea, but seeing Margaret's disappointed expression, Rob and Tracy agree to meet the next afternoon. The next day, before meeting with Margaret, Rob arrives at Tracy's house early, saying he wants to practice their act while taking a walk. Rob then shares his career journey, mentioning that he once appeared on a TV show where he only spoke 2 very short lines. During their time together, Rob asks about Tracy's life to better fit his role as her fake fiancé. Hearing this, Tracy then opens up about her past, explaining that she became a withdrawn and angry girl after her parents died. As she grew older, Tracy gradually changed, realizing that her grandmother's suffering was even greater. From this story, Rob says he can understand Tracy's feelings because he has been honest about his mother dying when he was 9 years old. After their conversation, Rob and Tracy head to the location chosen by Margaret and meet an employee named Claude. Shortly after, Margaret and Alan arrive, ready to tour the facilities to determine which is suitable for Tracy's wedding. While viewing the outdoor party venue, Margaret asks Rob and Tracy to stand in front of the altar so she can take a photo of them as a keepsake. At that moment, two women recognize Rob from a TV series where he played a mechanic. As they prepare to leave, Rob suddenly panics upon seeing an insurance ad featuring him as a model. Fortunately, Tracy notices the ad too and distracts Alan to prevent him from seeing Rob's face prominently displayed. The next day at the office, Tracy looks up Rob's biography on the internet and finally believes he was truthful about his background. Additionally, Shelley realizes that Tracy has fallen in love with Rob, but Tracy is still unsure of her feelings since their relationship is only a charade. Shortly after, Rob unexpectedly enters Tracy's office and invites her to lunch. At the restaurant, Rob tells Tracy that he has received an offer from an agency to work as an extra in a TV series. Knowing that the filming will take place in another city, Rob is hesitant to accept the offer because he already has a job in this city. Rob also asks Tracy to read the script from the director and give her opinion on whether the role suits him. When Tracy returns to the office, Shelley suddenly shares important news about Rob's father, Arthur. It turns out Arthur is the owner of several luxury restaurants in major cities, making Rob a wealthy heir. Coincidentally, Rob arrives to bring the script for his new role, and Tracy asks why he kept his father's successful business a secret. Hearing this, Rob explains that he doesn't want to rely on his father's wealth and prefers to work to support himself. The next day, Margaret visits the company to inform Tracy of important news, where Margaret reveals that she has already paid for the wedding venue and wants to hold a rehearsal or practice ceremony for Rob and Tracy. Feeling spontaneous, Margaret feels guilty, but Tracy agrees to follow Margaret's wishes to see her granddaughter married. Moreover, Tracy doesn't feel forced to fulfill Margaret's request because, during their charade, Tracy has genuinely fallen for Rob. A few days later, Rob and Tracy meet to discuss their wedding rehearsal, where Tracy tells Rob that Margaret has already paid for the venue and that the rehearsal will be held on Saturday. During the meeting, Rob also shares some news that he has been cast as the lead in a production and has to attend a costume fitting, also scheduled for Saturday. Both are puzzled by the conflicting schedules, but Rob eventually agrees to prioritize Tracy and says he will contact his agent to reschedule the fitting. That evening, Rob goes to a restaurant to meet his father, Arthur. It turned out, the father and son have not seen each other for 3 years because Rob decided to live independently and not rely on Arthur's wealth. Since becoming a successful businessman, Arthur has never forced Rob to be his heir and respects his son's decision to pursue a different career. At that moment, Rob tells his father that he has fallen in love with a woman and wants his blessing to give his mother's heirloom ring to Tracy. Elsewhere, Todd, who is drinking at a bar, accidentally sees the insurance ad featuring Rob. It turns out that the bar owner also recognizes Rob from when he was hired by a former girlfriend to pretend to be her fiancé. The next day, Rob goes to Margaret's company while on the phone with his father, telling him that he wants to end the charade with Tracy. Unfortunately, Tracy overhears the conversation and misunderstands, thinking that Rob wants to end their ruse altogether, not realizing that Rob plans to propose to her for real during the rehearsal. A few days later, the day of the wedding rehearsal finally arrives. Rob then goes to the dressing room to talk to Tracy, but she acts coldly, leaving Rob confused about what has happened. As the rehearsal begins, Todd suddenly shows up and exposes Rob's identity as a hired partner for Tracy. At that moment, Tracy is forced to admit their charade and says she never expected Margaret to support them this far. After Tracy leaves, it is Rob's turn to apologize to Margaret for deceiving her. However, Rob confesses that he has genuinely fallen in love with Tracy and plans to use this moment to propose to her for Rehearsal. After the incident, Tracy visits Margaret in the hospital, where Margaret informs her that the ring Tracy is wearing belonged to Rob's late mother. Margaret then instructs Tracy to find Rob's father so she can learn that Rob has indeed fallen in love with her. Following her grandmother's advice, Tracy goes to the Hollingsworth restaurant to meet Arthur. At that moment, Tracy immediately returns the ring to Arthur, but he explains that Rob had asked for the ring to give it to the woman he loves. During the meeting, Arthur also reveals that he and Rob had spoken on the phone about Rob's desire to end the charade by proposing to Tracy. Because of this, Tracy realized that she had misunderstood Rob. After that, Arthur returns the ring to Tracy so she can reunite with his son. After leaving the restaurant, Tracy visits Margaret in the hospital again to inform her that she has met with Arthur. Margaret then encourages Tracy to find Rob because she can see that they truly love each other. As Tracy leaves the hospital, she unexpectedly runs into Rob, who tells her that he has declined the film role offer. In that moment, Rob confesses that he has fallen in love with Tracy, bringing the film to its conclusion. Moral lesson from the story: sometimes, pretending to have a fake fiancé can lead to real love, but remember, renting a groom is not a long-term relationship strategy.